Hi, Rob.
Good evening, Kelly. How are you today?
I'm great. Were you able to get the slides adjusted with the three slides?
Yep.
Okay.
As soon as I can share my screen.
Yeah. No, that's fine. I just want to make sure. Because I don't. So I'll go over those first ones quickly, and I'll just tell you to advance it because you'll have the presentation on your computer. So I'll just give you the sign.
Perfect.
So when the sun is down, you have a backup. Emissions have gone down because natural gas is the #1 source of electricity. You sound just like your granddad. A heart attack? Do they have life insurance?
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Hi, Stuart. How are you doing, Stuart? What's going on in Campbell these days?
Long time no see.
I know. It's been a little while.
Yeah, it's life is still zooming on, right? How about yourself? You keeping busy?
I will be right back on. I just have to switch to my phone audio because the computer audio sometimes fritzes out. I will be actually on in about a minute and a half.
Oh, no worries.
Excellent. Yeah, keeping busy. One of my clients is VTA. So deeply affected by the shooting there last week.
Yeah.
A lot of coworkers who I work with, and I'm sort of consistently doing work for them on their development projects. Actually, hey Daniel, Brent Purse said that he was working with you, well, and Paul really on trying to talk about the long-term planning for the VTA site on South Winchester.
Oh, yes, next to the train station.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so a lot of people who I do a lot of work with and work with every week are really still reeling from the shooting. Just to get started on a high note.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not a uncommon occurrence anymore, is it?
No, it's
like
not.
A weekly occurrence somewhere in the US, so it's terrible.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it's not uncommon, and it's that's the problem, right? Problem definition.
Okay, Adam, you're back in, plugged in, connected?
Yes, I can hear everyone. Just pulling up my notes.
Right. Okay, Daniel. Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the SARC. I'll do a little official blurb to start with, and then I'll hand over to Daniel. So the Site and Architecture Review Committee is subcommittee of the Planning Commission authorised by Campbell Municipal Code. This is a type of unofficial, well, not unofficial, this is a subcommittee that makes recommendations to the Planning Commission. However, the SARC has no decision-making authority and its recommendings are not binding on the Planning Commission. So this is really an informal opportunity to get review from a couple of planning commissioners before it goes in front of the Planning Commission.
Thank you. And before we get started, I did want to introduce our new director, Rob Eastwood. He's coming from us from Santa Clara County.
Hi, nice to meet you all. Nice to be here and see you virtually and just your observant tonight, but hopefully at some point I'll meet all of you one way or another. So nice, glad to be here.
Welcome, Rob.
Is this your first SARC meeting, Rob? Is this your first one?
Yes, yes, it is.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, I'm,
Let's make it memorable.
For the right reasons.
Thank you.
Glad to have you on board.
Thank you.
Welcome, Rob.
Thank you.
All right, so first up is a minor plan development permit modification request for a property located at 2605 South Winchester. Just give me one moment. Let me load up just a brief slide deck here. Let's see what we got. Okay. All right, so this is a 2-acre property located on Winchester Boulevard, just south of Friar, north of San Tomas Expressway. It is developed with a 24,000 square foot R&D building that it was originally approved as part of a 1982 plan development permit. The application would allow for effectively a change of use of the building from its past R&D usage to a new ambulatory surgery center, which is an outpatient medical facility. Not specifically defined in the city zoning code, but more or less captured within the general medical clinic's definition. The application is mostly interior improvements, but there are some exterior alterations to both the building and the site that generally do warrant site architectural review. Here we have the site plan, the full site plan at the bottom right, and then the enlarged on the top. You see a new path of travel from the public sidewalk, corrected ADA parking, outline of the canopies that are being proposed along the building, additional patient discharge parking in the rear, a new trash enclosure located here, as well as a new generator with its own enclosure as well. In terms of architectural alterations, fairly minimal, mostly some building canopies and a new roof screen. At this point, primarily the major consideration for the SARC to discuss this evening is the proposed parking deficiency. The site does have 96 parking stalls, which was sufficient to serve the past R&D use, which has a lower parking standard that would have actually resulted in a surplus of almost 20 stalls. But medical facilities do have a greater parking standard, which in this case would result in a demand of 120 parking stalls, yielding a deficit of 24 stalls. Consistent with the city's parking modification permit requirements, the applicant did submit a parking demand and trip generation study. That document is predicated on the IT parking generation manual that incorporates various observation values that are applicable to the proposed use. The applicant also did provide documentation from comparable surgery centers in Santa Barbara, which altogether suggests that the 96 parking stalls would be sufficient for the proposed use. However, the SARC and ultimately the Planning Commission must determine whether or not to accept this material as sufficient to warrant the parking reduction. Excuse me. The city always does retain the ability to require its own outside parking analysis if the Planning Commission feels that is appropriate. And with that, I will hand it off to the applicant, or unless the SARC members have any questions.
Thank you, Daniel. Not from me, I don't know. Adam?
No questions so far.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Rob Gambrell is the agent. We'll call you agent. Agent Gambrell there is giving the presentation tonight. So he can share his screen, right?
You should. Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
you sit down?
Awesome. So I'm just going to say a couple of words, and then I'm going to hand it off to Rob. First of all, Daniel, thank you, and Rob Eastwood. You have a great staff member in Daniel. I know it's been hard for him in the time between Paul left and new staff was hired. Well, I don't want to say I know it was hard for him. It was hard for me, and he was fantastic. So thank you a lot. Thanks for the staff report. Rob and his whole design team and architecture team and everybody are on the line. That's what all these people are, at least all the ones that I can see. So they can answer lots of questions about the business and what they do and why they do it. But I just wanted to quickly address what I agree, Daniel says is sort of the critical piece tonight, which is how much parking does an ambulatory surgery center need? So the current zoning code, the zoning code in the city of Campbell does not have ambulatory surgery center as a use. It's a fairly new kind of use, certainly much more prolific in the last 10 or 15 years. As you can see, that the ambulatory surgery center typically has a patient visit from 3 to 6 hours. This is the kind of thing where you come in and you have your knee done, the arthroscopic knee, or you get a, when they put the scope down your throat and all that stuff. So it's a 3 to 6 hour on average for patients. And this particular surgery center at South Winchester has 8 rooms. So a total of 8 patients at a time. A traditional medical or dental office, the patient visit would be, anywhere from half an hour to maybe an hour if it was sort of oral surgery or something like that. And for a 30,000 square foot building, 29,000 square foot building, that would be like 50 exam rooms. It would be really huge. So using that exact parking standard seems a little misleading to me, as you'll see on the next slide. So we did a couple different methodologies to make sure that the 96 spaces we're proposing are sufficient. One is here, the Institute of Traffic Engineers. They publish books every year, and they have supplements that come out every year, and every couple of years they have a whole new manual that comes out. And this does have a category for ambulatory surgery center. It very clearly says that that's code 612, and should be parked at 8.5 spaces per operating room. That would be 8.5 times 8 in our case, or about 68 spaces. So using this standard, we're 28 spaces over parked. And the next slide, you'll see methodology number 2, in case that wasn't sufficient, is we went to Scott Shell at Associated Transportation Engineers, who I know is on the call right now. And he did a lot of empirical evidence and a lot of research based on the surgery centers he's designed all over the state. And he says that he has these are in the staff report, that says that typically they would only need about 6 spaces per room, that would be the peak demand, would be 6 per room. And so if we use this methodology, then we're a full 48 spaces overage, sort of, 100% overparked. And then not formal methodology, but because I have Google and a lot of time in front of my computer, I went and took a quick look at the parking spaces for some of the other surgery centers in the area. There's one more in Campbell on South Bascom. There's one in Los Gatos on National, and they're all parked at about, I looked up the old use permits for them. They're parked at about 3.5, 3.6, 3.7 per thousand, and we're parking at 4 per thousand. So even though that's more that's more conversational, I felt like it would just be good for you to know what we're comparing ourselves to. Unfortunately, the zoning code in Campbell doesn't have an exact use. So that's my local expertise on parking and land use. And with that, I'll hand it over to Rob, and he can tell you more about Hamas and Boulder and ambulatory surgery centers.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly. Actually, I might just press pause there. It does seem like this is a sensitive topic here, and see if there's any feedback that we want to engage on the parking. And maybe out of that conversation, we can explain a little bit more about the exact operations here, and talk a little bit about some of the, frankly, I think we saw a handful of comments come from some of the local neighbors, and we can address those comments if necessary as well. But really want to address this parking waiver that we're seeking, because I think Kelly hit it on the head when she said this is a sensitive topic for tonight.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Adam, did you have any questions at this stage?
I'll just tell you where I'm at. I had a chance to look through the information that you folks included in your submission. It was indeed very thorough. I think I'm vaguely aware that the ITE standards tend to be
based on a worst case scenario, sort of a ceiling for where parking should be. And a lot of places then use them as minimums, and that's how we get a giant amount of overparking. That said, I think it's an issue that we don't have parking standards for this particular use. I have been pushing to have to redo our parking standards. That has been our work plan for this year, but it hasn't come up. And it definitely sounds like something that, like, obviously it won't work, like, won't apply to this particular project, but in future, this seems like a very straightforward oversight to fix. And given that this is more parking than other ambulatory surgery centers have and hasn't caused problems, I see no problem with the current parking setup.
Okay, thank you, Adam. I had a couple of questions. I probably know the answers to these, but I'll ask them anyway. Will there be any emergency vehicles using this facility? And my second type of follow-up question, are all your procedures scheduled, or do you plan to have a type of drop-in facility? Or
Yeah, thanks, Stuart. In fact, on the screen here right now, we've got two neighbors had submitted some comments to the city that we were made aware of. And through the operations here, the noise control was a consideration that both Layla and Mark had brought up. And so all of the operations or the patient visits that happen in an ambulatory surgery center are scheduled. And so I want to address those here on this slide. We can talk about what an ambulatory surgery center really is. It's part of the education here, if you will, because we're not a typical doctor's office or a clinic space where you go for your check-in. This is all appointment procedures and surgeries that are taking place at this facility. So we have focused staff and focused doctors and surgeons, physicians on site. They come the day of your operation and prepare for you specifically. Our patients will arrive. They will be, typically they cannot drive home. This is an ambulatory surgery center. So it's an outpatient facility, unlike a hospital where you might stay overnight. All these patients go home and leave under their own power, typically after their procedure or operation. And so really what you'll see is that people may arrive early in the morning. In the narrative, we described that we have staff that arrive early in the morning, about 5 a.m. to open the center and begin preparing for operations. And we may have patients arrive as early as 6 a.m. With their driver to drop them off. So it's typically one patient per car and then their companion. That companion may or may not stick around for the operation, and then they would leave. In the event they would leave, they would come back many hours later for the pickup. So we have this is a highly skilled and focused way to treat patients outside of the hospital and deliver that same level of high quality care. These same patients do not follow up with the physicians at this location. That's when they go back to their clinic space or other locations. So they're really in and out, if you will, at this location. Based on the 8 procedure rooms that we have here, 2 procedure rooms and 6 ORs, I think that parking would be sufficient here. We have, like we said, our traffic engineers on as well, and then we have our architect on to support that comment. So hopefully that addresses the operations. The one thing about noise that I forgot to highlight was, and I think Layla, the neighbor, brought up the idea of ambulances arriving at all hours of the night, maybe. Again, because this is really a business hours operation, Monday through Saturday, we would not see ambulances bringing patients to this location. These are all people, again, by appointment. What we would see is, in the unlikely event that something were, a patient were need more specific care, maybe at that point in time, an ambulance may arrive and then depart on occasion, but that's a very unlikely not very often occurrence. So altogether, a quiet operation, much like you'd see in any professional setting.
Yeah, and just to add to Rob's comments. They are scheduled, and they generally only schedule, physicians will only schedule patients with very low risk factors in an ambulatory setting. If they have higher risk factors that would lead them to believe there's a chance of something going wrong and an ambulance being needed, those are usually scheduled in a hospital setting. So these are only usually the lowest risk patients.
Thank you for that additional comment.
That's Mike Fields. He's with Boulder Associates, our ambulatory surgery specialist. He's designed your group's designed about 130 of these. So
Yeah, at least I've been designing them for 25 years, so just a few.
I did have one more thing I wanted to bring up. Sorry, I didn't remember it earlier. Are you planning on providing bike parking for employees? I mean, obviously people aren't going to bike away from knee surgery, but like your first,
that's
plan. Yeah. Sorry?
I was joking that surgeries are getting better. Who knows? Maybe someday they will bike away. We're hopeful. But yeah, we'll be providing bike parking on site. I believe it's out in front of the surgery center along Winchester.
Okay. Okay. And the other thing, I don't know this off the top of my head. It's actually kind of a question for staff. I think from the application, staff would start arriving at 5 in the morning so they could see patients starting at 6. Is that considered late night hours?
It is. Anything earlier than 6 a.m. or after 11 p.m. is late night activity.
Okay.
So when we say they would arrive, this would maybe 1 or 2 nurses to begin to open the facility in the morning. Very light operations in those early hours, and that would be in the event that it's one of those long scheduled days.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any more questions, Adam?
I think I'm all set for now.
Thank you. So I guess I share similar views to Adam. I think generally Campbell's quite conservative on its parking. I think what we've seen, and thank you for providing that, is some good points on evidence to justify the lower parking requirement and a parking modification permit. So unless you disagree, Adam, I think we'd be in support of this and support the modification.
Yes, the only thing I would probably want to have is some kind of keep an eye out for if people complain about noise between 5 and 6 in the morning, have some condition of approval that it won't unduly bother people. But in terms of the parking, yeah, I'm fine with that. And the architectural features seem to be minor and they look reasonable.
Yeah, and the building looks in good condition anyway.
These two are for the people trying behind the building.
Okay. Well, I think that's the feedback from the SARC. We'd be supportive of this application going into the Planning Commission. So I don't know whether there's any further comments from Robert and the team. If not, thank you for choosing Campbell, and good luck with the with your centre.
All right. Thank you. So we are scheduled for Planning Commission in 2 weeks. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone. We look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks, and we really appreciate your time and look forward to continuing to deliver high quality care here.
Thank you for choosing Campbell.
Thank you. Thanks again to
Thank
Daniel.
you.
And welcome, Rob.
Thank you.
Planning Commission.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
How do I get out of this? That's it?
Yeah, that is it for number 1. So if you are done with your item, you just go ahead and hit leave in the bottom right corner. Exit Zoom.
We never signed in. So it doesn't matter.
Okay, with that said, that kind of brings us up to item number 2.
Bring it back up. Oh, it's another item on Campbell.
I'm not involved in that one.
Oh, my God.
And Ryan, if it's possible, could you go ahead and mute some of our participants from item 1? So we can kind of advance. Go ahead and start
You're
sharing my
welcome to
screen.
stay, but if you could mute, that would be very handy, but I'm sure you might want to leave. Thank you.
Go on.
Well, okay, just to go ahead and get us started on item 2. So in terms of meeting management, it's about 6:52 right now. We got planning commission at 7:30, so we'll go ahead and get started. So item 2 on the agenda is for 1070 Dell Avenue. This particular project site is an 18,000 square foot parcel. It's located on the east side of Dell Avenue, south of East Sunny Oaks. The property is in the M1 Light Industrial Zoning District and is surrounded by industrial uses on all sides. And this particular site was last used by an automotive repair shop. The proposed project includes a modification of a conditional use permit to allow the establishment of a late night 24-hour towing services station to be operated by AAA, as well as a parking modification permit to allow a reduction in parking. It's 1 parking space. While no exterior changes to the building are proposed, the site layout would be changed to kind of rearrange parking spaces, as well as to add a little bit of landscaping, which we'll touch on here on the next slide. So on the screen here, this is the facility. So it's served by 2 driveways. You have this kind of a 2-way driveway on the north side of the property, entering onto Dell, and a 1-way exit driveway on the south side of the building. This results in a kind of like a circular, clockwise circulation pattern for the site. These first couple spaces could likely back up and exit through the shared driveway that they have with this adjoining property to the north. But really, what we're looking at here is minor changes to the site. We're adding ambulatory parking spaces. They're adding a couple of elongated parking spaces to accommodate oversized vehicles. But we're still maintaining that path of travel around the building, so you kind of maintain that circulation pattern. At the back of the building, so once you kind of make your way around, there are these number of service bays, which would provide access to the vehicles to get inside the building. So while no customer vehicles would be towed to the site, AAA would be using the building, the bays, to service their existing vehicles. So you'd have like a AAA vehicle that needs to restock batteries, it's needed, that type of stuff. So when they deploy, again, it's mostly like a dispatch center, best way of imagining it. And they'd be operating 24 hours. So when your battery dies and you're on the highway, they dispatch from the site. They'd be restocking their cars on site and exiting. So the parking spaces you see on the property, they serve both the employees, as well as they have admin staff in the office side of the building. But then during the day or during operational hours, you're gonna have 2 shifts of staff. All the trucks are gonna be out and about doing service. Here on the site plan, you're also seeing, I kind of highlighted here in green to try to make it pop out a little bit more. This is the landscape area. So the site's, it's in the M1 zoning district. Whenever we get these conditional use permits, it always provides an opportunity to try to bring these properties more in conformance with the code whenever we can. The M1 actually would require an 8% of the site to be landscaped. I think it's 10 feet on the front, 5 feet on the side and rear. This is an existing site, so we're operating within existing constraints. So when we're looking at a site that's already fully improved, in case you've got pavement all the way around the building, it's just looking for opportunities to try to beautify it. Usually our focus is on the front of the building, the areas which are visible from the public right of way, which is really what they've kind of proposed here. Areas along the front. Discussion point is whether or not we should be, although this building's pretty much at the property line, on the front, there might be opportunities to put a little bit of vines or landscaping along the front to just kind of further that objective. In regard to parking, as I kind of mentioned, there is a parking modification required for this request, although it's shy 1 parking space. Similar to our last item that Daniel was presenting, we don't really have a clean code definition for what a towing services station, the parking demand is. So we found it comparable to some other motor vehicle repair uses. So we found this one to be equivalent to a 1 per 300 standard. little bit of an interpretation there, but I think we feel like that's a good place to land on this particular proposal, but does result in them being deficient by one space technically. And that's also accounting for all these interior parking spaces. So a part of the building, they're proposing to effectively convert into an interior parking lot. So particularly Bay 5, you see all these transit vans. These would be in when the vans aren't in use, like these would be the AAA vehicles. They'd be parking inside the building. Their employees get there, they'd be kind of doing a little bit of a shuffle, and then they'd be parking the employee vehicles probably inside the building. And then over on the side over here, you see these are service bays where they'd actually be doing maintenance, lifting the trucks, you know, and like. And then on the back of the building, you're seeing you have this larger flatbed. They also have wheel lifts, some equipment that they use in association with their business. So with all that said, and in consideration of this project, we as staff, to help facilitate review, we'd raise a couple of discussion points, which are pretty much here on the screen. First and foremost is, anytime we've got a new use, we're trying to make this determination: is this site, is this use appropriate for that property, and have they made the requisite adjustments, the site layout or design, to make that site appropriate for the types of equipment, vehicles that will be serving the property. In regard to parking, if there's any opportunities to improve the layout of the parking spaces or the design to accommodate the proposed use of the site, landscaping. I touched on one of those points earlier, but are there any additional areas where landscaping should be added, such as vines on the front of the building or elsewhere throughout the property if we feel as if it's warranted? And finally, in regard to amenities, so we actually have this general plan policy that whenever we're considering these industrial properties, they kind of recognize that the employees don't really have a lot of great options of where to go when they're, you know, going out to lunch or going on break. So there's a general plan policy which talks about having these amenities like an outdoor eating area for employees, a break area that's outside the building. And so it may not be appropriate in all light industrial properties to have that. Sometimes the sites, like, again, existing constraints might preclude it, but there's a discussion point on the screen here, just whether or not we feel as if that may be appropriate. And with that said, that concludes staff's presentation. We do have our applicant here tonight, but I had indicated that likely there wouldn't be a requirement to give a presentation, but I'm sure they'd be available for any operational questions that you may have.
Thank you, Stephen. That's great. So really just invite, if the applicant wants to say anything, you don't need to, but you're more than welcome to.
I think a couple things that I'd like to stress. I'm sorry, my name is Jeff Hannison. I'm the manager of construction for AAA. This is an entirely employee-oriented facility. We're not towing customer cars here. There is no customer-facing part of this facility at all. So there will not, the general public will not be driving up, coming in, visiting anybody. There'll be no services. Speak totally employee only. From a towing standpoint, the way things work is when a driver comes in for a shift and they go out, they're out their entire shift. There will not be, we don't necessarily dispatch, we don't really dispatch out of here. This is where the truck starts the day and where it ends the day, but they're towing vehicles all day long and they're not coming back between runs. Also, parking is a little tight around here, but I do want to emphasize that all these people are professional truck drivers. So when it comes to, dealing in tight spaces, that's what they do for a living. Like I said, we're not having anybody off the street having to come in and deal with the parking situation. Those are just a couple key things that I want to make sure that I emphasize.
No, appreciate that. Thank you. Adam, any questions, observations?
A possibly silly question, but if the driver shifts are 19 people, there's not room for 19 trucks there. Am I missing something?
Well, the trucks, the majority of the trucks will always be on the road. So we'll never have 19 trucks in the facility. And if we do, it would be for some reason the facility's not in operation. So they would be put in such a way that they'd fit, but they wouldn't have to circulate or they wouldn't have to leave. But for the most part, the trucks will be on the road when they're not in for servicing. And for
Okay, and because
servicing,
it's
we're just
24 hour,
talking,
there's never because it's 24 hour, there's never a, we shut everything down and all the trucks are put away kind of moment.
no,
Okay,
no, that's not.
that
the
makes
case.
sense.
There is a, overnight, sometimes it does, the load decreases and there will be some trucks parked, but at no time will, all the trucks be there at the same time.
Okay. Any thoughts, Adam? Or happy for me to go?
Yeah, I'm all set. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I had a look at the site this morning, and in terms of circulation and parking, and following on from the staff presentation from Stephen, I don't really see any issues there. So I think it looks fine, and that's what the area is type of intended for. In terms of the other 2 points which were brought up, which was the type of landscaping and an outdoor eating area, it is type of a brutally barren space, right? So I would definitely be in favour of not only the planned landscaping, but putting some, I don't know, creeper or vine or a potato vine, wherever it is, at the front of the building. There's a type of treatment, a similar type of treatment with plants on the opposite side. It does make a bit of a difference. And it would be nice, as Stephen mentioned, there's no real walkable place for employees to go out and get a sandwich or something. So they're going to be, I know most of them will be out on the road, but there will be some people in the office. So it would be great to have an outdoor eating area which was shaded. If there could be some landscaping around that to make it a bit more pleasant, that would be a really good thing to incorporate in the design.
Okay. We'll see.
I
I know that putting a table with an umbrella is easy. The landscaping, we'll have to see what we can do. I will say though that the interior space, we're only utilizing, I don't even think, a half of the interior space. So there's plenty of interior opportunities for the employees.
Yeah. Understand. Sorry, please.
I just add to that I guess I went out there this morning and I have a hard time seeing an outdoor space that would not just feel like you're sitting in the middle of traffic, because the outdoor space is basically the lane for the trucks to go around, except maybe that little space being landscaped if you had a picnic table out there. But if you can have an indoor break room, that might be just as good.
I mean, in all likelihood and reality, there'll probably be some kind of picnic table or something out there, because there are people who still smoke and they need a place, on break to go out and smoke. So one way or another, there will be a picnic table or something, or a bench, or at least something out there for the people who want to be outside.
Yeah, and I think if it was shaded, because it's one of the areas where there's like 0 trees, and people just sometimes want to get outside, right? You're stuck indoors all day. It's nice to see a bit of sunshine occasionally. But apart from that, I'd be supportive. I don't really see any issues of it, with those comments in mind.
And then just for the record, we have done quite a few live tests with the trucks being parked, driven through. So our exercises are not just on paper; they've also been live.
Okay. Any further comments?
I like the idea of putting vines on the front wall. I don't know how practical that is, but if it does turn out to be practical, I think it'll be a really nice addition, because everything is kind of gray and industrial there, and that would definitely look nicer. One other thing about the plan. When I was there, it's not a parking space in front of the door in the northwest part of the site. And then there's currently, I think, at least 2 parking spaces to the west of that. And on the upcoming plan, there's only 1. It looks like there's room for another parking space there, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I can hop in here and maybe share my screen, show the
One,
area that's.
one thing I will mention is there, okay, honestly, I didn't do it, honestly. There is an unapproved kind of trash can enclosure that the landlord built that we will be taking out to make a space. It's basically just about an 8x8 fenced in area with slat. So that is not shown on this plan, and that will have to come out to create, that's maybe the parking space you didn't see was where that trash enclosure is.
And if I'm understanding you correctly, Commissioner Buckbinder, you're talking about this area here towards the front.
Yeah, exactly.
By the door.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about our code, so again, this parking space wasn't exactly a permitted space to begin with. It was kind of one that was also kind of stenciled in. You can kind of tell usually when you have these the curb stops. This one doesn't have one here towards the front. I'm not sure if you guys can see my cursor, but this was kind of added in kind of after the fact. It didn't meet setback requirements. Setbacks would generally dictate you can't have parking right up against the street. There'd be a 10-foot setback requirement. So going to the site plan here, if I can jump ahead, I mean, that's arguably an opportunity to have an enlarged landscape area. So you have this little additional pocket where that's being removed, right? You could fill that in, and then you still would have that first space more than 10 feet back outside of the required setback. So, I mean, they are kind of jogging this landscape area, and that you do still have this little kind of a dead no man's land. Could be an attractive nuisance for people to park there. It's not tend to be parking space, pavement.
All right. Yeah. Given that little space there, I would honestly rather that also be landscaping than being, it's not parking, it's not anything. I saw there were some concerns about, I want to say like limiting the number of employees you can have, but I think it would be, if you think that you can run the facility without overflowing parking, we could just add as a condition of use that people don't park off site. If that would be, I think that might be easier to do.
Okay.
Stuart, do you have thoughts on that?
No, similar comments. I think if you've got that extra space at the front, let's put it into landscaping. I don't think you want to park off site there anyway. It's it's a pretty tough place to park, right?
Yeah. The current amount of proposed landscaping, I know that it was like our goal is 8%. What does the current proposal get to?
Go pull up that page. I think it's in our project data. So the landscaping is at 1.5% out of the 8%.
That's the after.
That's the after 1.5% after. That's what the 200 something square feet that they're adding. And again, this is a developed site, so we don't. It's. I mean, the planning commission is empowered even with brand new sites to reduce the landscaping requirements. But yeah, the code would generally have, if you were building a brand new industrial site, you'd be providing 8%.
Okay, yeah, I would very much endorse extending the landscaped area northward then. I think that's all the comments I have.
Okay, well, thank you. I think that's the comments from us. Stephen, is there anything else you need?
Yeah, we touched on all the points nicely, and I've got good notes. So this particular item will probably be heard before you in July. So I think we're targeting the July 13th meeting. So it's going to be 2 meetings out, but we'll return with probably revised plans reflecting the comments that you provided tonight.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody. I think we've got about 15-20 minutes before the planning meeting, so we better call it a day.
Thank you all very much.
Okay.
Appreciate your time.
Jeff. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Thank you.